Okay, so my nCloth simulation for clothing. We have a character that is animated. Yeah, we need to put the clothes on there. So I'm going to start with the pants. The reason I start with the pants is because the pants are underneath everything else. I have a shirt, I have a jacket. The pants are underneath the shirt and the jacket, so everything else is going to sit on top of it. So I need to simulate the pants first. So I'm going to hide my pants and my jacket. Now the first problem you'll have if I try to simulate it as is, the pants are going to fall down because they need to be held up at the waist. Now there's different constraints and stuff that you can try, but I find that just skinning the pants and then using that to hold the pants up is a better option. So to allow me a little bit more detail in my pants, you know what, I'm going to leave them like this, but if you want more detail in the pants, you can always put a smooth note on there and then you'll get more folds and stuff. But in the interest of speeding the process up, I'm going to leave them at this resolution and call it good. Okay, so my pelvis joint, I'm going to select each of my knees. So just 3 joints basically. I have my pelvis, my left and right bind knees, and then I'm going to shift select my pants, and I'm going to go in my rigging menu set here, go to skin, go in the bind skin options. I'm going to reset it. Always switch this to selected joints. I'm going to leave everything else default except this. I'm going to set max influences to 1. This is going to ensure that every vertex on my pants is skinned to a single joint. Okay, so bind skin. So what does this look like? You'll see that now it looks pretty bad. All right, let me hide my joints here so we can see this better. It looks pretty bad, but that's what we want. Okay, if we look at the weights here, if I go to paint skin weights, you'll see that my pelvis has that influence right there. So let me just reset it here. My pelvis has that influence. My left knee has that. My right knee has that influence, and my left knee has that influence. There is no blending between the different zones here. It's all, each vertex is 100% on one of those joints. Okay, so that's how I want it. Okay, so next thing we can now do, now that we've skinned it, is we can go back to the FX menu set here, and then we can go to nCloth, and we're going to create nCloth. So that's going to turn my pants into a cloth object. Okay, and then as soon as we do that, you will notice that down here, let me close my rig here, we have a nucleus node, which the nucleus node basically defines all the physics for the simulation. So all the gravity and wind speed and such are held in the nucleus node. The nucleus node has an enable switch here, so if I turn off enable, it's going to completely disable the entire simulation. So every piece of clothing that you make is going to be under this nucleus node unless you decide to define a new nucleus node. Generally, I only have the one nucleus node in my scene, so this will turn that on and off. So I'm going to keep that enabled. You'll also see that I have an nCloth node in my scene as well. That is defining the cloth characteristics for the pants. I'm going to start in my nucleus node. I'm going to go down, scroll down to substeps. Usually I will increase this to 12 and the max collision iterations to 16 just as a starting point, because 3 and 4 is really low. Substeps is how many times per frame the calculation is done, and the collision iterations, it refers to the accuracy of the collisions. Okay, so when the pants collide with the body, for example. Then I'm going to go in my time attributes, and I want my simulation to start at frame minus 40 because I've given my cloth enough time to settle. So basically the character is going to go back to his starting position. This will allow the cloth to sort of settle with the body, and by the time I get to frame 1, this is where I'm at my first pose, and then the cloth will now be following the character. So I don't want my simulation to start at 1. I want it to start at minus 40, so I'm going to plug that in. Excuse me. And then space scale, usually because these by default my units are centimeters, so this is a 1 by 1 centimeter square. meaning that this guy is only a few centimeters tall. So if I start by setting this to 0.1, basically what I've done is I've made him 10 times as big. The simulation sees him as 10 times as big as he actually is. So it's going to simulate it like he's, I don't know how many centimeters tall he is, but now it's going to be each one of these is going to be 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters instead of 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. So I don't know, 9 or 10 or 15. I don't know what that is. I'm not going to count it. But now it's 10 times as big. So he's a lot bigger. Anytime you're dealing with dynamics, the scale is very important, because if you want it to look like the right size cloth, you need to know what scale you're working at, so that you know, if you're trying to do a big flag or something, it doesn't feel like a, handkerchief. Okay, so now that I've set that, I can get out of my nucleus node. I'm going to go on my cloth node. So collisions. If you open up the collisions tab here, we have our collision flag is face, which means that it's going to calculate the collisions according to faces. The self collision flag, which is the collisions with the cloth when it collides with itself, is going to be done at the vertex level. So when the cloth collides with something else like the body, it's going to be calculated at the face level. If you actually want to see a physical representation of the thickness. So thickness is how thick your cloth is. Are you simulating a really thin piece of silk, or are you simulating a big thick wool blanket? This is where you set the thickness. So in order to be able to see the thickness, you need to turn on, right here in the solver display, turn on collision thickness, and you'll see you get this sort of yellow sort of geometry here, and the yellow is just defined by this color right here. So if I turn up my thickness, you'll see that increases and decreases. This is going to affect how this cloth bends and folds. Okay, so the thicker it is, the less detailed folding you're going to get. Okay, so I'm going to reduce it down to like, I don't know, let's go 0.025 or something, or maybe 0.02, so we don't make it too thick. Okay, and you can always mess with this later. Then self collision thickness, and again, because it's happening at the vertex level, you will notice that it shows it along the vertices here. And I'm going to leave this at well, let's go to 2.75. Let's make them a little bit smaller. Okay, bounce. We don't really want bouncy cloth. I'm going to turn this off. We don't really want bouncy cloth, so I leave that at 0. Friction, we need to have some friction in there. I think I'll leave it at 0.1. And then if you want your cloth to be sticky, you can also turn up the stickiness. I don't think I want that here. Then if I come down here to dynamic properties, the dynamic properties are the actual attributes of the cloth. So depending on the type of cloth, you're going to punch in different values here. Now, it's kind of tough to figure out what's what here. So what you can do is just use a preset. If you click on presets, you'll see that you have different things here. So the preset that I usually just start with as a starting point is the t-shirt preset. So I'm just gonna come down here to t-shirt and then go to replace. If you don't want to replace the existing settings, you can always blend them, but I'll just replace it so that it completely sets it to the t-shirt settings, and you get a little bit of a description here of how that t-shirt works. Okay, first thing I'll do is I will just up my stretch resistance to 100. So I don't like my pants to be very stretchy, because they look really fake if they stretch a lot. So I will usually turn this up. Bend resistance, I'm going to say maybe 5. It just determines how much bending the cloth will resist. So if you don't want really bendy cloth or the foldy cloth, you can turn that up. Now usually that's about as far as I'll go. Okay, and at any time you can come back and tweak these if needed. The input mesh attract. So we skinned this model before. I mean these pants before. So the input mesh attract, basically if I turn this up and I set the input attract method to lock values 1 or greater, what that's telling Maya is that you want the pants to follow the skinning and not the cloth. Okay, so the input mesh was skinned. So if we tell it to input mesh attract, basically the cloth sim is going to the pants are going to follow the skinning over the cloth sim. Now this is useful for a couple of things. In order to get the pants to stay up at his waist, what we can do is tell it to only follow the skinning up at the waist. And then we'll tell it to also follow the skinning right here at the bottom of the pants so that the pants can stay tucked in the boots. So, and then the rest of the pants we can have follow 100%. So right now, as it is, if I put this at 1, it's just the whole pants are going to follow the skinning, and the cloth is not going to simulate on the pants. But we can define we can like paint where we want it to follow the skinning, and then where we want it to follow the cloth simulation. So with input attract at 1, I'm going to just isolate my pants here, Control 1, and then I'm going to go into the nCloth menu, go to Paint Vertex Properties, and go to Input Attract. So let's open that up, and as you can see, now for some reason when you first open this up and the paint attribute here, it puts the wrong thing in here. So and this usually just happens the first time you do it. So I will always open this up and make sure that I am on input attract. Okay, so we're just painting that value. So right now it's 100% on, which means that if my input attract is at 1, I am following the skinning 100%, but I don't want to follow the skinning 100% for the whole pants, or just for the top of the pants and the bottom of the pants. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, with my paint operation set to replace, I'm going to set my value to 0, and I'm going to flood it so that it's completely black. So what this means now is that the input attract has no effect at all, because I'm at 0 here even though I turn my setting up to 1, because this is now painted black, it means it has no effect. So what we can do is then go back to 1, come down here to stroke, and do a reflection. And reflection just means it's going to paint on both sides, just to speed us up here. I'm going to hold down B and left mouse click and drag to the left to shrink my brush down. I'm going to take the solid brush because I don't want to feather anything just yet, so I'm just going to take my solid brush right here. And then with a value of 1 and a replace paint operation, I'm going to start painting white here. So what I'm telling Maya here is that where it's white, I want it to follow the skinning 100% and not the cloth simulation. And where it's black, I want it to follow the cloth simulation 100% and not the skinning. So that's what we've done there at the waist. Now we can do the same thing down here at the bottom of the pants here, so that this part of the pants will stay tucked into the boot. Otherwise what happens is the pants will eventually jump out of the boots, and we don't want that. So let's just go ahead and paint this like that. And sometimes the reflection is not perfect, as you can see. So if that happens, just go in and clean that up. There we go. And do the front here. Okay, look around it. Now, because I use the hard brush, these are very harsh settings here. There's no fall off. And the reason I didn't use this brush here is because there's an easier way to do it. If I set my paint operation to smooth and then hit the flood button, you can see that it feathers that out for me, both top and bottom, so that it's not such a harsh transition. Now the problem is when I hit the smooth, the values up top here may no longer be at 100%, and I need them to be at 100%. I want them to feather out as they go down, but at the very top I want it to be 100%. So I'm going to go back to replace with a value of 1, and again shrink my brush down and just get those top 2 edge loops there and make those, and just this way I make sure that they are at 100% and that they will do it. They will stick 100%. Okay, so just go through and make sure you get it all, and that way I'm good. I think down here, because I had a much wider range here, I shouldn't have that problem, but if you want, you can go through and just paint. I think these are pretty good right here. Okay, so that is done. I'm going to hit W just to get out of the paint tool. And if I now go back, hit Control 1 to bring this back, So let's do a test. I'm going to save my file. You want to make sure you save your file before you test any simulation, because if it does happen to crash on you, then you can always just restart it and be right at that same spot. Okay, so I'm going to hit the play button here just to see what happens, and you'll see that my cloth is now simulating, and it's staying up at his waist, but it's obviously not hitting his body. So that is the next thing we have to tackle, is make it so that his body can actually collide with the cloth. You can see that I am getting simulation here, but because my body is not a collider yet, the pants are going right through the body. So let's reset that and now select his body. And what we want to do here is we want to smooth the body, just because if you look at the back of his body here, there's a lot of, because it's sort of low res here, it's a lot of angularity and sort of sharp points. So, and what's happening is you can see them through the pants here. So that's going to cause the shape of the cloth to follow that. It's not going to look very good. So what we can do is just smooth our body, and give it a second here. There we go. So now that it's smooth, you can see we don't have that stuff coming out of the pants there. Okay, now that we have him smoothed, what we can do is go to nCloth and make him a passive collider. So create passive collider. Okay, so now that he is set to a passive collider, he will actually react to the cloth. Now the passive collider, if we go in there, it's an N rigid. If we go in the attribute editor, you'll see that it also has its own collision thickness, so you can actually see the thickness there. And these things are not too bad in here. If it 0.014 should be just fine, so I'm going to leave it as is. And then I don't think I change anything else. If you want more friction, you can always increase it here on the collider. So let's then have a look here and see what happens if we play this back. You'll see that now as it simulates, the body will stay inside the pants, and the pants will actually react to the body. Okay, so we know that that's working. The pants are staying up. They're staying tucked in the boots. Everything should be fine. Okay, so I'm going to stop that here. So now that we have it set up, what we need to do is save out the simulation. So we need to cache it. So I'm going to select my pants here, and I'm going to go here to nCache. I'm going to create new cache. I'm going to go to nObject and go in the option box. Okay, so you know, you can decide where you want to save this. I'm just going to put it somewhere. I'll make a folder in here called cache, and I'm going to put the simulation in there. I'm going to call this sim, because there's going to be two sets of caches. So the first set is going to be the sim caches, so I'm going to put them in there and hit open. And then this is the pants. Okay, the settings here, cache format is MCX, that's fine. File distribution, one file per frame, or one file. So one file per frame means that it's going to make one file for every frame of simulation. So if you got 100, and I think I got like 120 plus the minus 40 there, adds up to a lot of files. So I like to just use one file. It's going to put the whole simulation in a single file, and to me that works better. The time range, basically you can do the render settings. You can have it just use the time slider range, which is what I do, or you can define a start and end. So that's what I'm going to do, and I do this again, pants, there we go. Okay, so once you have those settings, I'm just going to zoom out here so I can keep an eye on them through the entire simulation here. And I'm going to hit the create button, and once it's done simulating, I will be back. Okay, so now that it is done, you can see that we get into position, and then he walks, and the pants, if I just stop it on a frame here, you see that the pants have simulation, and you're gonna get a little bit of interpenetration. I mean, it is what it is, but it should be fine. Now, I don't have a lot of detail on my folds, and again, that's because my resolution on my pants is kind of low. So if you want to have a, more fold detail, you need to have denser geometry. But for the sake of this tutorial and just getting this stuff done pretty quick here, I kept it pretty low. Okay, so you'll notice that as he goes through his animation, the pants stay at the waist. They also stay tucked into those boots. Okay, so, and that's all cached out. So if I go to my nucleus node and turn it off, you can see that now the simulation is completely turned off, and I still have the pants following along, because now it's not getting its information from the cloth solver, it's getting its information from the cache file. One thing I should mention is this: I did forget to make the boots a collider, so I went back and I made those. I just selected them and made those a passive collider so that the pants would actually bump into the boots at the top there. Okay, so that's just one thing that you can also do. And then I tweaked a couple settings in the cloth, but nothing major. I just dropped my bend resistance a little bit to try to get a little bit more folding out of that, and then I also dropped the thickness a little bit to try to get a little bit more folding out of the simulation. So just a couple minor things that I did before I ran the simulation. So now that these simulation pants are simmed, the problem is that these are very low. These are, there's no detail on these. So the way that I do my clothes is, if I want any detail, I have these high poly pants here, and if I isolate these, you can see that these pants have like seams going down the side and in the inside there. And there's also like geometry for the sort of belt line here. And I would never simulate these because they also have thickness to them. As you can see, there's actually thickness to these pants. And I would never simulate that, because you don't want to simulate something that's really tight and thin like that. You're not going to get good results. And also because I have geometry that's really tight in here versus like over here, in the seams. So it would just take forever, and it probably wouldn't simulate properly anyway. You'd have a lot of interpenetrations and things like that. So for the high poly pants, the way that we can get these to follow along with the sim pants is using a wrap deformer. So let me unisolate this. So the way that a wrap deformer works, you can go in the modeling menu set, it's under deform and wrap. Okay, so the way we're going to do it, I'm going to select my high poly pants first, and then my sim pants second. Just hold down control and click on the sim pants. Then I'm going to go to deform, and actually before I do this, I just want to save just to make sure that if it does crash, because the wrap deformer sometimes will crash your system. It just it's just part of it. So I'm gonna go to deform and do a wrap. Okay, you select the high poly first, then the sim pants second, and do a wrap. So I'm gonna hide my sim pants because I just want to see the high poly pants. Now that the wrap is on there, you'll see that my high poly pants now are moving with the simulation, and you can see that I have my seams and whatnot. So it's a quick, easy way to make it look like you simmed the high poly pants even though you did not. Okay, so now they are attached. So my my high poly pants are now moving with the animation like I want them to, and so these are the pants that would get rendered. These are the high resolution pants that you would then take to the renderer, and they'd be textured, and then you render them. So right now the wrap deformers on here, and wrap deformers can be slow. So I would not give this to the lighting department and the rendering department with a wrap deformer on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make another cache. I'm going to cache out the high poly pants. Okay, so this time though, I'm not going to do an end cache. I'm not going to do an end cache here. The end cache is good for the simulation pants, but these are not simulation pants. These are wrap deform pants. So a simple geometry cache is going to be good enough for these. So under cache, so we have end cache and then we have cache. I'm going under cache this time, geometry cache. I'm going to hit create new cache. I'm going to go in the option box, and again I'm just going to tell it where I want to save this. So right in here, and again one file, and I'm going to use the time slider again, and we're going to call these pants cache. Okay, and then I'm going to run this again, and make sure you save before you do it again. I'm going to run this again, this time for the high poly pants, so that they will be cached. And again, once that is done, I will be back. Okay, now that that cache has run through, you're not going to be able to tell a difference. It's just going to look like it did before. So what you can do is select your high poly pants here and just delete history. So edit, delete by type history. And when you do that, they will disconnect from the sim pants, and then we can just reconnect. It'll disconnect the connection to the sim pants. It will also disconnect the cache you just made. So we need to reconnect that cache. So go to cache, geometry cache, go to import cache, and then go find that cache file, which is right here. And as soon as I do that, you'll see that my pants now snap. Now they move, and the wrap deformer is no longer a part of this file anymore. Okay, so the pants are as efficient as they're going to be. They're just reading that data from the cache file. Okay, so at this point we can go in the sim pants, which are hidden here, and we can right here under the nCloth shape node, we can turn that off, which is going to remove that cloth simulation from those sim pants, because we're done with it now. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is the sim shirt. So I'm just going to show this. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to collide the sim shirt with the high poly pants. We don't want to collide it with the sim pants, because the sim pants don't have some of these details like this belt line here and what have you. So we want to collide with the high poly pants to give us a better simulation. So what we're going to do is then take our high poly pants and make those a passive collider. So select the high poly pants and go to create passive collider. So now they will bump into this shirt here. So for the shirt, it is a little low res, so I'm going to smooth it. Okay, just to add a little bit of geometry to it. And then for the shirt, I don't think I need to skin it, because it's a shirt. It's not going to slide off of him. It's just going to stay on the body. So I'm going to leave that without skinning, so I don't have to do that input or track stuff that we did before. nCloth, create nCloth, and then again we can just zoom in here and select our cloth here, go under collisions and turn on the collision thickness under solver display. Just look at how thick the shirt is. Let's go 1.15 here. And this collision thickness, I'll go to self collide with scale. I'm going to go to 2.5. I'm going to turn up the friction. So what is it at 0.1? I'm going to go 0.15, just so that the shirt doesn't slide around his body too much. Now his body is already a collider, and I'm going to go 0.15 there as well, just to help that along as well. Okay, so with this selected again, I can turn off my collision thickness there. Okay, and I can save my file again. Okay, and then I believe I had turned off, yes, I had turned off the nucleus, so I need to turn it on, otherwise my cloth won't work. So let's turn that back on. Okay, so save again right before you sim. It's always good to hit the save button. So let's just do a quick test to make sure that the cloth is moving, and if you see that it's not, we got to figure out why that is. So let's see here, that's enabled, this is enabled, and again just making sure that our time starts at -40. Let's try that again. Yeah, so sometimes when you play it through the first time it won't work. So we do have simulation now. You'll see that here. Let me stop it real quick, just hit escape a few times. Now what you're seeing here is the default cloth settings, And if I go under dynamic properties, under my nCloth shape node, dynamic properties, you see that my stretch resistance is really low. So this is why I like to turn it up, because otherwise the clothes do stuff like this, which is obviously very bad and doesn't look good at all. So again, I'm just going to go to presets, and I'm going to get that t-shirt preset and replace this. And even at that preset, it only raises it to 35, and I want to set it up to at least 100. I might even do 150 just to really get it up there. The bend resistance, I might go, let's try value of 1 for that. You can mess with the mass and stuff, but I generally just leave those. So let's rewind this, and let's play it back again just to see. And now you should get hardly any stretching. So as you can see, you get much better results. The default values for the cloth are just not good at all. So definitely start out with a preset, and then you can adjust from there. Okay, so this is working. I'm going to hit escape a few times to stop it. There we go. Now that I know that it's working, I can run my simulation. So again, because this is the sim shirt, I'm going to use an nCloth, an nCache to do it, because I'm still simulating this. So nCache, create new cache, go to nObject, go in the options, and again we need to tell it where we want it. I'm going to put it in the sim folder. I'm going to call and then just hit open, and then one file, time slider, and we're going to call this shirt. Okay, and I'm going to hit the create button, and before I do that, again, save, just to get in the habit of doing that. So I'm going to run this cache, and we will continue from there. Okay, so now the shirt has simulated. If we run it back, you can see what we have here. It's just the shirt moving with the body. We're getting some nice folding in the arms there, and it's looking pretty good. Again, if I want to, I can turn off my nucleus node just to make sure that all the animation is coming from the cache file and not the nucleus node. Okay, so we have now got the sim shirt done, and we need to then show the high poly shirt. And remember, because we smoothed the sim shirt, I'm gonna have to smooth the high poly shirt as well. So I'm just gonna smooth that. I'm gonna hide my sim shirt, select the high poly shirt, shift select the sim shirt, and we're gonna go to modeling menu set and go deform and wrap. Okay, just give that a second to finish what it's doing. There we go. And now the high poly shirt should, as you can see, the high poly shirt's got the seams, it's got the detailing and the cuffs and everything. So it is now following along, and as you can see here, we're colliding with the pants very nicely, and that's looking pretty good. And if we smooth it, just hit 3, and you can see how nice that looks. Let's smooth the pants too. You know, there's definitely settings that I could have improved in the simulation, but for this is fine. Okay, so we're getting nice sort of contact between the pants and the shirt there. Getting really good results here. Okay, so unsmooth that, just hit 1. Okay, so now we have our high poly shirt hooked up to the sim pants, and now we need to cache out the high poly shirt. So cache, geometry cache, create new cache, and we're going to save this out. So right in this folder, and then we want one file, and we're going to call this shirt cache. And again, I'm going to run this, and I'll be back when it is done. Okay, so the caching on the high poly shirt is done. If I return to position 1 here, and then delete history on the high poly shirt, so delete by type history, you'll see that now it stays there. And then all I have to do is go to cache, geometry cache, and import that cache the shirt cache. And as soon as I do that, now it's running on the shirt cache alone, and it's not running on that wrap deformer. Okay, we want to get rid of the wrap deformer because it is intensive. It just adds more stuff for the computer to have to calculate. So remove it from there after you've made the cache, and then just run it with the cache. So now both the pants and the shirt are running on caches. Okay, so that is the shirt and that is the pants. So next we need to do that little jacket. Now my pants, I no longer need to be part of the simulation. In fact, I'm going to get rid of my nCloth 1, which is the original nCloth node for the sim pants. I'm done with the pants, so I can get rid of that. I'm done with the nCloth for the shirt because I'm going to collide with the high poly shirt, which is running off a cache. And by removing these things, it's making sure that they're not getting calculated and thus slowing my system down. Okay, nRigid 1 I believe refers to the high poly pants. So since my jacket is not going to be, I want to bring up my jacket here so you can see it. Since my jacket is a short jacket, it's not going to be touching the pants at all. I don't need the pants to be a rigid body. And then the rigid 1 is the body of the character, so I'm going to leave that. Rigid 2 I believe is the boots, so I don't need the boots. Let's just make sure, select the boots, and you see nRigid 2 there, so I don't need that anymore. I'm going to save my file here, and it might be a good idea to to increment your files as you save. So I have the rigid for the body. I need to convert my shirt, my high poly shirt, into a rigid as well. So nCloth create passive collider. So now it is rigid as well. Now our jacket here, because it is open in the front, there's a chance that it just might open up and then start to slide off and try to slide down the arms. So in order to hold it in place, what I'm gonna do, and this might take some experimentation, what I'm gonna do is skin it to one of the joints in the spine here to just hold it right back here in the spine. I just want to hold it to the body. Now the jacket could use a little bit more resolution, but at the same time, if I'm if I'm saying that maybe it's like a leather little vest type jacket, then it would be a thicker material, and a thicker material tends to not bend as much, so this little bit of geometry might be fine. So I'm going to leave it as is, and we'll see see how that looks. So I'm going to show my joints again. So let's find a joint that we want to skin to. Maybe this one right here, and that is my neck A joint. So I'm going to select that, shift select my jacket, and I'm going to go in my rigging menu set, do a skin, and I'm going to bind that there. So now that is now bound to the body. So as I move it, you'll see that now my jacket is moving along with it. It's obviously not simulated, so it's just moving. It's just a rigid piece right now. So now that it's skinned, I'm going to go back to my effects menu set, go to nCloth, and do a create nCloth. Okay, so select it. Let's look at our thickness, collision thickness. Now again, being that this is like a thick leather jacket, I'm going to leave the thickness pretty high here. Maybe not as high as 0.38, maybe 0.32 or something like that. Okay, so that's going to be pretty thick. So let's turn this off. Self collide with scale is at 1. That might be a little high. Let's see here. Self collision thickness here, and let's go vertex, and it's actually not too bad. Okay, so we'll see how that works. We can adjust it if we need to. Okay, presets. This time I'm going to start with something like what do we have here? Thick leather. Let's try thick leather. And again, I'm just going to boost my stretch resistance. I just don't want any stretching going on in this thing. My bend resistance is 10. That might be a little high. Let's go down to 5. Okay, so we'll see if that works. If not, we can use a different preset. So now I can hide my joints. I don't need to see them. Okay, so I can even hide my my pants there, just so they're not having to run with the simulation. All right, so let me save, and then I'm going to hit the play button. And oh, actually, before I hit the play button, because this is skinned, I need to come down here to input mesh attract, and I need to turn this up, set node locking or input attract method to lock values of 1 or greater. So what that means is when a value is at 1 or greater than 1, it's going to lock it and not move it at all. It's not going to follow the cloth at all. If you have non-locking, you might still get a little bit of movement in there. So I like to lock it so that it does not go with the cloth at all. Okay, so input attract set to 1. So again, like we did before, we need to go in nCloth, paint vertex properties, go to input attract, and again, for some reason that goes to collide strength. Switch it to input attract, replace, set my value to 0. I'm going to flood it to remove all influence, set my value back to 1, and I might turn on my reflection here on the stroke. And honestly, I don't need much here, so I might just sort of and then get your solid brush there, so something like that. And then what we can do is go to smooth and start to flood, and then maybe just here replace 1, have that sort of hold, and you may have to experiment here, maybe go there. It might end up being too obvious that it's being held up at that point, so we'll see what happens. All right, so I'm going to leave it like that for right now and see what we get, and save my file again. And then I'm just going to play it back to make sure that, and again, the first time I play it, for whatever reason, that does not go with it. Let's make sure that our nucleus is turned on. Yep, I need to turn that on. So rewind it and play it again, and hopefully, yep, this time it looks like it will go. So I'm going to hit escape. Okay, and I'm just gonna look back here. Yeah, you see we have a little bit of that there. So what I could actually do is reset this. Let's go back to input attract. We might actually be able to get away with, so paint vertex properties, input attract, and instead of it being 100% there, we're just going to go to smooth and flood it a little bit. So it has some influence, but not 100%. So that might just be enough to eliminate that little bit of bump that we get there. So let's go there. Let's save my file again. And then what I'm going to do is let's play it again just to see. And that's looking much better. So hit escape. And yeah, I like what that's doing better. Okay, so let's give it a whirl and see what it's going to do. Just gonna go back in here and just look over my settings again, just make sure that I have everything that I want. I think I do. So let's run a cache on the jacket. So let's go to nCache, create new cache and object. Go in here, click on there. We're in the sim folder, and this is jacket or vest or whatever you want to call it. Actually, no, we don't do that here. We just select the folder here, and then we type in jacket and one file, and so on and so forth. So with that selected, you got to make sure that the thing you want to cache is selected. Then you hit the create button. So once that's done, I'll be back. Okay, so this jacket is now simulated, and it is now following along and bouncing off the shirt as you would expect. Looks pretty good. So again, like we did before, we need to now connect the high poly jacket to the sim jacket. So I'm going to show the high poly jacket. I'm going to hide my sim jacket, select high poly jacket, shift select sim jacket, and we're going to go on the modeling menu set. We're going to go to deform. And again, before I do this, I'm going to just save real quick because the wrap deformer can crash your system. So deform and wrap, and just give it a sec. Oh, and it's done. Okay, so again, if I scrub this now, you'll see that my high poly jacket is simulated, and there we go. So we have all the clothes done at this point. What we need to do is then cache out our high poly jacket. So again, we're going to use a geometry cache, not an N cache. Now we're not going to use an N cache. We're going to use a regular cache as a geometry cache. I'm going to create a new cache, and let's go up to here and hit open, and one file type slider. We're going to call this jacket cache. Okay, I'm just going to zoom out and run this, and I'll be back. Okay, so the cache has run for the jacket, and again, like we did before, we can go back to the start position. We can delete history on it, and that'll disconnect it from the cache and from the wrap deformer. So then we can just go to cache. We can go to geometry cache, import cache, and we can import, although we don't actually have to do it for the jacket, but we can do it here. Import cache and do the jacket cache, and now everything, at least all the clothes, are now cached out. Okay, so that is it for the clothes. So if we go in the clothes here, I'm going to bring back my high poly pants. Those are now cached out. Okay, so the whole outfit is good to go. Okay, so the next thing I like to do right now, we have our rig in here. So you know, all the controls and everything are in there. Since the animation is done and it's locked in and it's not going to be changed, because any changes to animation right now means the cloth has to be redone. So at this stage in the game, you are not changing animation anymore, which means if you're not changing the animation anymore, we don't really need the rig in the file. Okay, what I'm going to do is get rid of all this dynamic stuff here because I don't need it anymore. So we don't need the rig either. So what we can do here, and I'm just going to hide my controls again here, and I might as well just hide my joints. Okay, so I'm going to take my body and I'm going to now unsmooth it. Actually, no, I'm going to unsmooth it because I had smoothed it before. So I can go into history and unsmooth it. So now it's back to its lower resolution. Okay, so now things are a little snappier. And then I can duplicate it, hit Shift P to unparent it from my rig. And because it was skin geometry, I can now unlock all my attributes. Okay, and for right now, I'm going to hide that one. And that's the one I'm going to apply the cache for the body to. So in order to get rid of my rig, I need to cache out the animation of the actual body as well, not just the clothes. So for that, I'm using a geometry cache. So cache, geometry cache, and create new cache. And again, we're going to go in that same folder here, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to do one file, I'm going to call this body cache. Okay, and this should be relatively fast. I'm just going to hide all the clothes just to get them out of the way. And we're going to select the body and run the cache. Oh, hold on a second. Let's cancel that. Is there a cache on the body right now? You know what? I'm going to replace it and see what happens. So it's going to run through and cache out the body. And hopefully it won't hang up on me. Sometimes the caching out of things will get hung up on the last frame. And if that happens, you just have to force quit Maya. The cache usually is there and intact. You just reconnect it. But for some reason, it'll hang up on that last frame like I think it's doing right now. So if you try hitting escape a few times and nothing happens, then it's probably just hung up on you. And in the case, just restart Maya. So what I'm going to do is go do that now. And oh wait, no, we're back. So we have we have the cache created for that. What I'm going to do is bring back that body that I made earlier, and I'm going to go to cache, geometry cache, and import the cache onto that one, which is body cache right there. So as you can see, that body that I just made is now cached. Okay, so again, I'm going to hide that guy. So now we need to do the same for everything else. Okay, so here let's do the boots. So select the boots. Looks like there's a cache on there, so let's go ahead and just geometry cache. Let's just delete cache on the boots. There shouldn't have been a one on the boots. So we're going to select the boots by themselves. Cache, geometry cache, create new cache. We're going to go in that same folder, hit open, and we're going to go boots cache. Okay. And then again, I'm just going to save and then hit the create, and it's going to go through, cache out my boots, and let's give it that, and that one finished, no problem. So my boots are now cached. So what I could actually do is go back to the start frame, duplicate my boots, shift P to unparent them so they're down here, unlock the attributes, and I'm just going to take the ones off of these. So boots, and then on this the copy of the boots here, I'm going to, because right now those boots are not going anywhere, so what I'm going to do is cache, geometry cache, import cache, and we want the boots. And as you see, they are now moving with the rest of the body. So all you got to do is go back through and do the rest of your character, and then you can then cache out the body. So what I'm going to do is pause the video here. I'm just going to run through this really fast, and then go ahead and show you the results when we're done. Okay, so now everything has been cached out. So here's my rig. I'm going to select the whole group that the rig is in. I'm going to hide it, and then I'm going to show all those pieces that I cached out. So show those, and you'll see that now I have my character's body without any rig driving it. So it's driven entirely by cache files, and if I bring back his clothes, you can see that every part of him now is running off a cache. I don't need the rig anymore. So this is what I would then send to lighting and rendering, or to texturing, or whatever. It's all ready to go. So I have a closed group here. I can group this and call it character, or whatever. Oh, I already have a group called character, so we'll call him Bob. His name's Bob today, and I could put his clothes in that same group. Now in the closed group, I don't need all the sim stuff, so I can delete all the sim pants and whatever this is here. Just get rid of that, leave the high poly in there. So now I can just take this whole group here with Bob in it and export it out, and leave the rig behind in this scene here. Just leave this rig behind, and you'll see that I can take the whole Bob group here and just move it off to the side, and you'll see that it's now separate from our rig. Okay, so all I have to do at this point is just export this out to a new file. It's gonna, I would put it into a new, completely clean, completely empty file, so that the file would not have all this extra stuff in it. Because the rig, there's a lot of stuff in the rig. If I open it up all the way, I mean, there's a lot of nodes in here that I don't need anymore. So that's why it's a good idea to get into the habit of doing this, so that you don't have to worry about, you get a much lighter file too. I mean, everything's going to move a lot faster because the cache files are a lot more efficient than all the deformers and constraints and everything that's in the rig. So being able to just export that out makes life a lot easier. All right, so that is the workflow that I use for doing cloth in Maya. This is the Maya cloth. Now, you know, in this day and age, you probably wouldn't use Maya cloth much. You'd use like Marvelous Designer. But if you don't have access to that, Maya cloth can work. You know, it can be used. It's probably not going to be good for really realistic, high resolution stuff. But for some of this more cartoony stuff, you can get it to work and work pretty well. I think it turned out pretty well with the jacket and everything. So, and having the pants tuck into the boots, I think that worked out pretty well. So that is the cloth workflow. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one.